All right, so we ready? We are going to draw Beyonce. I just have a regular number 2 pencil, nothing fancy at all, white piece of paper, print out, but you are going to use a mirror and draw yourself. So we're going to start out by just drawing a circle, the top portion of your paper. You can see how I'm holding the pencil to the side. This is so I do not draw a dark line because I'm not ready. Because right now I'm just sketching. Then I'm going to pull down a center line and I'm going to try to meet it with kind of an oval shaped base. And at this point, I'm not even looking at my reference. I'm just looking at a shape that is going to resemble a generic head. So this is how everyone's going to start. So the circle represents the back part of the head. This is the symmetry line dividing your face into 2 halves. And then this is the jawline. So I'm not even looking over here. I'm just focusing here, okay? You are going to draw your eye line halfway between the top dot and the bottom dot, which is not up here in the center of the circle, but actually it's right here in the middle. And we think that that looks a little low because we are imagining this without hair. So once you have hair, the hairline will come in about here and it will fill that in so it doesn't look like there's a big gap between this line and this line. So our eyes are going to go here. So I'm just going to do, again, a real general idea of where the eyes are along that line. And again, I'm holding my pencil very loosely. I'm going to draw a triangular shape, which represents where the nose will go, and another almond shape where the eyes are. So again, this is sketching at this point. We're not even drawing. And I'm going to go back and kind of figure out where everything is according to my image later, okay? So now that I have this, I want to make sure I can fit a third eye between these 2 eyes. And the reason that is because that's going to make sure that the spacing is correct between the eyes by fitting one of these eyes between. If you have them too close, then you'll look kind of cross-eyed, and if you have them too far away, then you look like your eyes are looking outside the edge of the image. So make sure that you're along that line while you're doing this. And again, this is just a placeholder, so we know where that goes, okay? So now I'm gonna really look back to my reference and see. And so I'm looking at her eyes, and everyone's eyes are shaped quite differently. She has almond eyes that kind of jump up on the sides, and then her eyelids mimic that same shape. So I'm just looking at the shape of the eye and the eyelid at this point. So now I'm going to jump over here again, making sure I've got enough room, and I'm applying a little more pressure with my pencil. So I've got a slightly darker line. So I'm just trying to figure out the shape. So I'm not pressing too hard, just kind of trying to find where it lies within that first generic shape, and then where the iris is in comparison. So if you leave too much room at the bottom or the top, you'll look like you are terrified. And again, it's touching the top and the bottom lid. Sometimes you'll find that when your eye is naturally resting, it will touch one or the other. It might not touch both. And then your pupil is that little dot that goes in the center. So I'm just going to kind of place that in, go back, give her a second eyelid here. Make sure all my spacing's correct. Okay, now I'm going to see if this line is about right for the space that I need from between her eyes to the bottom of her nose. And it might be right. I'm going to say it's pretty right here, okay? So I'm going to start off with this shape here, which is a larger circle. and then you're going to have two smaller circles overlapping representing these two. And so depending on your face, sometimes these are wider, sometimes they're smaller, but generally these are all circular shapes. So now I'm going to go back, and this is where the magic happens, and I'm going to turn this into a nose. So just by connecting those three circles, you are creating the shape of a nose. And this will probably be the best nose that you've ever drawn, because it's the first one that actually looks like a nose, okay? So I'm not going to draw two dark lines on the edge of the nose, which is a mistake that we've all made at some point in our life. And we just know that that represents the bridge of the nose because we know it comes forward. But we're not going to shade too much right now because we're just getting general with our areas here. So now I'm going to see how far down I think, because I have a little placeholder here where I think the mouth is, but it might be a little bit lower. And the shape is a little different. So her mouth comes out slightly further than her nose. So if I kind of look here, we'll see it comes out just a little bit further than that. And you can draw a light guideline just to see how far out your nose is. And she's got a little smile in the corner and an indication of her cheeks. And while we're down here, let's see where our chin is. So we can see like a little bit of her chin here. And I think it goes a little further than that dot again. So this was just a sketch to kind of figure out the placement of everything. And so while I'm down here, I'm making these relationships between the mouth and the face as to how far out this is from here. And I'm slowly coming back up towards her eyes. So some people have a very square jaw, some people have a heart-shaped face, some people it's very soft and round, and these angles aren't so harsh. Men tend to have much more angular features. So again, I'm just kind of lightly sketching in before I make any definitive decisions. So while we're back up here, we can see a hairline. And before we do her actual hair, we want to try to give her a general eyebrow shape. So most of our eyebrows have an arc in them, whether it's in the center or further to the outside. And depending on where they are, her eyebrows come in a little further than the corners of her eyes here. So I'm just kind of looking back and forth between my drawing to the image over and over again. So this is going to keep your drawing loose so you don't make any hard decisions. And those of you that are heavy-handed, it's difficult to hold your pencil like this, but once you do, you'll understand the benefits to that. So now that I have her eyebrows placed, I want to kind of draw a little shape of how thick I think her eyebrows are. Again, just lightly sketching them in before I draw, and eyebrows are obviously just little hairs. So I'm going to go back and just sketch in some hairs, and you can see the direction of the hair where it starts off in the center, and as it goes to the outer part of your eyebrow, it gets thinner and there's less hair. And so now I can also see by her temples, she has hair growing. And here she's got, this is about her hairline, which I guessed was in the right area. And all the way down to now where I can see, and her head kind of comes to a point because it's gathering into a knot for her ponytail. So again, nice and loose. So a trick that you can use to place your ears is the top of your eyebrow and the bottom of your nose. That is where your ears go, and you'll be able to see that when you're looking in the mirror. So ears are kind of a tricky shape. So if you start off with two long ovals first, then you kind of want to carve out that ear shape from those ovals. So I've got a fold here, and it's almost like a little triangle, and I'm just trying to find those shapes in there. She's got some large earrings that we'll put in as well that are so big they're kind of jumping off from her ear. And we'll jump over here, and again just kind of carving out those general shapes. I'm applying very little pressure because I haven't really made any definitive decisions yet. So while I'm over here, I can also see this shape of her braid that is peeking out from behind her earrings and her ear, and will go right off my page, which is good. So as I'm looking down here, we got to give her a neck. So if you give a neck that's really thick like this, she'll look like a quarterback. And we know she is not a quarterback, as strong as she is. So she's got these beads that kind of come around the front. We're not going to worry about the details right now, but let's give her a neck and a little indication of some shoulders, okay? I'm going to go back up here because we can actually see that the direction of her hair and the top of her braid, where it's all pulling back into that ponytail. So you've got a knot. Again, it's okay, go right off the edge of your paper. Always better to draw big. When you draw big, it's a sign of a confident artist, so don't be afraid to do that. Okay, so now that I've got all of this kind of sketched in, I've got my proportions, which is the whole point of drawing very loosely and lightly, so it's actually sketching. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some pressure and I'm going to add some shadows. So before I do that, I'm just going to use an eraser. You can use any kind of eraser. It doesn't have to be fancy. And I'm going to lightly erase my lines without getting rid of the drawing. So this is just my guidelines that I sketched out just to kind of get my proportions together. So I have a brush here. You can use your hand, it doesn't matter, just to get all those shavings away. Now I'm going to look at some of the shadows. So I can see she has a shadow here, so I'm not going to draw those dark lines again. And this is defining the bridge of her nose, so by just shading lightly, I can define that without giving too much detail. She's got a little bit of a shadow down here, and this photo does not have many shadows, so I don't have to push it that hard. So the corners of everyone's eyes are quite dark, so I'm going to start to add pressure with my pencil now. And everyone has quite a dark ring around the outside of their eyes, no matter what color your eyes are. Hers are obviously a light brown, and she has this highlight and a very dark pupil, which we all have. So our eyelids cast a shadow onto both the iris and the whites of the eyes. So I'm going to cast a little shadow, and that's going to also make it look round, and lightly shade in that eye. So she's got a dark ring on the outside and the inside, and then she's got a light brown. So eyelashes are tricky. A lot of people make the mistake of making them look like a sun ray, but eyelashes actually come out towards the outsides of your eye. And then you can see the inner lid of her eye and then her outer lashes. So her eyelashes do not come from the inside of her eye. That would be gross. And she's got a little bit of a shadow under here. And in my defense, it is always more difficult to draw beautiful people than it is to draw someone with wrinkles and imperfections, but she's pretty perfect. So I've got one eye down. I'm going to give her a little bit of eyeshadow over here and darken her brows a little bit as well. Okay, I'm going to jump back over here to this eye and do the same thing. So adding a little bit of pressure, defining those lashes, her eyelid, leaving a nice crease, and this is going to help define the form a little bit. So she's got a little bit of a shadow under here. And I'm not really erasing too much because I'm not really worried about these as being mistakes as much as just part of the drawing. So I can always go back and erase because I'm not pressing so hard that I wouldn't be able to. But if you keep everything super light, then it starts to look thin and like it doesn't have any depth. So I'll press harder as I go on and see how she's looking. So I'm going to go back down here a little bit, and I'm just going to jump over her face and try to see if I'm capturing her essence, because sometimes you'll have everything in mind and then just realize that you've got your proportions off a little or your shadows are off a little. So as you do this more and more, the more you draw, the better you get. And no one is ever a masterful artist the first time. So be gentle and kind to yourself while you're drawing. Don't judge yourself too harshly, because you're just trying to figure it out. So I'm going to lightly shade. Please don't use your fingers to shade. You will make much more interesting marks with your pencil than you will with your fingers. When we use our fingers, we tend to just make things look dirty. So please resist the urge. I know many of you have blending stumps and you have other tools that you have used, but try not to, because your marks that you make have much more expression and are much more interesting. So as I come down, I'm going to soften her face a little bit. Her neck is darker than her face because it's in shadow, as little shadow as we have. The line defining her lips and the difference between her top lip and bottom lip is quite dark. So I'm just kind of jumping around to see what is going to make this look more like my photo. And is it an angle? Is it a shadow? Is it a proportion? Again, she has no imperfections that I can exaggerate, so it's a little trickier. So I'm gonna look into her hair and darken some of that hair, and you can see her little baby hairs, so you can do that lightly, and then towards her roots where it's a little darker, you can apply a little bit more pressure. obvious in terms of the direction that it's growing, so it makes it a little bit easier, takes the guesswork out of it. Braids are a little tricky, but once you get the hang of it, they're not so bad. So let me show you down here where you can really see. So the braids kind of interlock with one another. So there's one and then another, and then one and then another. And so you'll see that they create a pattern through that repetition. She's got these great big earrings. And for the sake of time, I'm going to just simplify this so you can kind of tell that there's texture. I'm not going to go into too much detail. And I jump around just to kind of see if I'm still on track with my proportions, with my shadows. If you spend too much time in one area, you can get stuck and you can fall in love with your drawing and then get so far and you go, oh my goodness, I did all of that for nothing because now I have to erase it. So I am looking at her eyes and I'm gonna make a decision to kind of bring those in a little bit. It's also a good idea to step back from your drawing, which I have not done yet because I'm sure that there is something that I could change that would be a nice simple solution and make it really favor her. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to keep going and hope that you don't judge me too harshly for not capturing her perfectly. So I'm going to look at this space between here before I put this earring in because I can tell that it's a pretty big earring and it's hard to really read what's going on in that image, but I'm looking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth trying to make this look as much like her as possible. Gave her some stray hairs there. So going to shade the side of her face, and this is kind of a trick you can use to make her look rounder because she's lit from the front. She's not really showing a lot of shadow, so it's kind of hard to tell about her bone structure. And you'll see that photos with shadows usually make much more interesting drawings and give you a lot more information than those that are lit as a frontal image like this. So my hand is filthy on the side from my drawing. That's just a sign of hard work. So I'm going to clean up my drawing because I keep smearing that. Here, I can see that that needs to be shut down a little. I'm not going to worry about those baby braids right now. Maybe do a little bit darker here. Showing the direction that the hair is growing. Simplifying those those earrings a bit so I don't do all those rhinestones. Feel free to put in all the details you want if you're feeling ambitious and brave. That's great. I'm going to fill her lips in a little. And see the centers of her mouth is just a little bit lighter. Your top lip is always darker than your bottom lip. She's got a little bit of a shadow over here, so I'm going to push that. Hope that sound is not too jarring for you. So if you've got some edges that you think are a little too harsh, you can just take your eraser and kind of soften that up. She's got quite a thin bridge to her nose that I'm not sure I've captured, but sharpen my pencil real quick. I'm going to use the side of my pencil so I can get a gradation without an actual line. So again, you be careful, you don't want her to look like she's got pencil marks all over her face, but give her a little bit of shadow. So may not look like Beyonce, but it definitely looks like a human. Okay, I'm going to call that finished for now. Thanks so much and good luck.